Thank you so much, Kendall. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Alan Pfeffer from Sentinel Benefits. With me, my friend and colleague, James Bremis. Today, as Kendall mentioned, we're going to be talking about uh, financial health for our employees. And we're going to cover it from really two different perspectives. What I'll cover is how to help participants with their assets inside of the qualified plan. And James will cover really helping participants with their financial health outside of the plan. As most of you know, just to tee it up, most participants have outside of their homes, their greatest amount of wealth within the retirement plan. So of course, that's hugely important to you as HR professionals because it's hugely important. These assets are hugely important to your participants. And then the second reason to pay attention and help participants within the retirement plan is your duty under ERISA to do so. So I'll cover that. And then, as I mentioned, James will cover two topics that we know are very near and dear to all the HR professionals that have tuned in this afternoon, and that is financial literacy and wellness. Two things that are just getting a tremendous amount of traction, not only in the HR community, but getting a tremendous amount of traction in the financial world. So bottom line is that we need to help, and our employees, your employees want you to help them with financial literacy, and beyond that, beyond just becoming literate in basic financial concepts, the other item that's just gaining huge amounts of traction in the HR community and again in the financial world is this whole notion of financial wellness and employee engagement and financial planning. What your employees want is for the employer to help them outside of the plan, want you to help them with many things, basically everything else, all of their financial needs beyond the retirement plan. So James will get into that, and we'll talk about how to set up a financial wellness program. What are the elements of that? So I know, or we hope that's near and dear to you. Without too much further hesitation, I want to talk about your responsibilities as employers. So most of you know that Sentinel is a record keeper, a TPA, and a fiduciary to retirement plans. So we have a tremendous interest in this topic, and really would like to help you. Anyone that would like us to talk to them after about how they can put together a cohesive, meaningful employee education program within the retirement plan, please let us know. And the same goes for help outside of the retirement plan, which James will cover. So as a fiduciary to retirement plans, what is it that we think about, and as many people on the phone are fiduciaries to their retirement plans, at their firms, what is it that you should be thinking about? So when we talk about kind of the demands of an ERISA plan, you actually have a duty as an ERISA fiduciary to make sure that there's a diverse menu of investments. In fact, this is right out of ERISA. Make sure that the investments under the plan are diversified. And as many or most of you have 401k or 403b plans, what this comes down to is a diverse menu. So in other words, let's make sure that we're giving and offering all the kinds of investments that make sense to offer without having 100 funds let's make sure that we have, let's say, 20 to 25 funds that hit the major asset categories, so that people that want to diversify can. Uh, and so that's going to range, those investments are going to range from uh, preservation of principal funds to several different kinds of bond funds, government bonds, corporate bond funds, large cap stock funds, mid cap stock funds, small cap stock funds, international funds. So, and within those kinds of funds, you've also got index funds, and then you've got actively managed funds. And um, that, if we did that, that would certainly be satisfying our fiduciary duties under ERISA, that broad menu, so that if I wanted to, I could construct a very nice lineup of funds. The other kinds of funds that are out there, as I think, as you all know, are the target date funds. So target date funds are funds that effectively a participant could utilize um, just by knowing when they're going to be retiring. So, um, so a diverse menu of funds really is considering all of those factors, all those asset categories that I mentioned: actively managed, indexing, and target date. Um, so that's what that looks like. That's what a diverse menu looks like. A good amount, but again, not having too many funds. Too many funds really makes it impossible for the participant to choose wisely between your investment menu. So constructing a good menu makes a lot of sense. The other thing that you makes a lot of sense, and again, you have to really do under pursuant to RISA, is to oversee the performance of these investments. So it's not it's great that you selected a diverse, good menu, but it's also a requirement to monitor the performance of these investments ongoing. It's a duty that you have and really should take seriously, especially when you're investing other people's money. So we like to think about sending out reports to our clients on a quarterly basis. We like to think about meeting with the investment committee on a at least a semi-annual basis. And during times like this, very times that are very volatile, when the capital markets, the stock market, and the bond markets are very volatile, we even think about meeting as a committee with you, you guys should think about meeting on at least a quarterly basis, at the very least semi-annual, but maybe step it up to quarterly, just to make sure that you're keeping your eye on the ball, because so much is changing so quickly these days. The other thing that we would want you to pay attention to, and again, I would really urge you to pay attention to, are the fees related to the investment. So, of course, want a prudent review of investment starts with looking at performance. It looks at performance relative to category averages and benchmarks, and the risk that a fund takes. But a primary obligation of any ERISA fiduciary is to take a look at fees related to the investments. And I think, as you all know, funds, investment vehicles, are made in different share classes. So since ERISA requires that you operate the plan for the best interest and the best interest of the participant, you do have a duty under ERISA to make sure that you're offering the least expensive share class, which means the least expensive share of that fund that you can possibly offer. So what I would ask everybody to do is go back, after lunch hour, and take a look at your investments and be sensitive to the share class that you're buying. Is it an A share class? Is it an R5? Whatever. But then ask yourself the question, can I buy this fund in a less expensive option? And that's really what, again, ERISA, which is the federal law governing ERISA plans, would have you do. So we talked about this diverse menu, and we talked about target date. So one of the things that um, a participant really has to come to, and we have to help them. We really do have to help them, and this is what James is doing every day for our clients. And some of the people on the phone actually have James as their investment consultant with respect to their retirement plan. One of the things that you really have to get the employee to determine is, uh, are they capable of doing it themselves? So will they be comfortable asset allocating on their own or with help, let's say from someone like James? So that is an important thing to get to, and we have to help the employee do that, and we have to do that usually through an educational series, an ongoing series of being in front of employees and asking them the question: do you feel comfortable asset allocating between uh, preservation of principal funds, bond funds, or equity funds? I think no surprise to anybody, most participants are not comfortable doing it themselves. Um, but for those that do want to assemble an asset allocation mix themselves, we need to have a kind of a diverse menu to do that. For those participants, which is most participants, that are not comfortable asset allocating on their own, they want someone to do it for them. And it's actually a very important conclusion, because if you can get to that conclusion, whether it's do it yourself or do it for me, then we can better guide the participant. So through employee education, we can help that employee determine what's more comfortable for them. Just to put it in perspective, 1 out of every $3 going into retirement plans today are going into the do it for me funds. Um, Do it for me funds used to be risk-based funds, but today that's really passe. Today, the do it for me fund that probably is a good vehicle for employees is the target date fund. So basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to figure out when is an employee, or what we help the employee do is to figure out when are they likely to retire. So if we're likely to retire in 20 years and we're in 2023, so we're thinking about a 2040 fund or a 2045 fund. By doing that, just by that simple kind of analysis, when are you likely to retire, and then utilizing a fund that lines up with when you're likely to retire, you've actually done a tremendous service for your participants. Because what a target date fund is going to do is they're going to construct the portfolio. They're going to asset allocate on behalf of that participant, anyone that's in that fund. In my example, the 2045 fund. They're going to do, the fund manager is going to determine how much in cash, how much in bonds, and how much in equities for someone who's likely to retire in about 20 years. They'll do the security selection, and then just as importantly, they'll de-risk or get more and more conservative, which in English means less stocks, more bonds and cash, the closer and closer you get to retirement. So that's just right there. You through providing an employee education program to in your ERISA plan, you've tremendously helped your participant, because it's much more important to decide how much bonds and stocks, much more important to determine how much in bonds and stocks than which bond and which stock. Asset allocation really is key. Um, the other thing that is beneficial uh, about an employee education within your ERISA plan is it's actually satisfying a Department of Labor regulation, and that's DOL 404C. So not only is employee education great for the participant, but there actually are some benefits for the plan sponsor. So what the DOL reg says is that when you have a participant-directed plan, which is a 401k or 403b, and you provide education to participants about the plan, the eligibility of the plan, the level of contribution of the plan, the funds within the plan, you're satisfying this regulation. And what the regulation or the safe harbor reg is meant to do is actually to take risk away from the plan sponsor. So anytime the DOL gives you a reg like that or a safe harbor like that, where you, the plan sponsor, by virtue of the fact that you've educated your participant, reduces risk to the plan sponsor, that's something that you want to take advantage of. So this is a real win-win. Employee education is a real win-win within an ERISA plan, benefiting the participant, benefiting the plan sponsor. We talked about the protections that this gives you. What must you do to satisfy the reg? I think I just covered that. And it's great to have great funds. In summary, what I would say is it's great to have great funds. It's great to monitor. It's important to monitor ongoing the funds. It's important to have a committee overseeing the funds. But without employee education, the participant really doesn't know how to utilize the investments under the plan. And that would really be a shame. And again, the employee really, through every study that James and I have seen, the employees really are relying on you, the employer, to help them with education inside the plan, and just as importantly, outside the plan. So let me stop, come up for air, and just if anyone wants to shoot a question, now would be a good time to do that with respect to the topic I just covered. If not, what we'll do is I'll just kind of tee it up for James on the to take it forward. So Kendall, you want to just advance, and we'll get into the next portion of the program. So James is going to cover wellness, financial wellness, and literacy. When we hear financial wellness programs, what are the components of financial wellness programs? That's really what we want to talk to you about today. We know a lot of you are interested in developing wellness programs within your organization. We'd love to help you with that. And then what's the difference between literacy, financial literacy programs, and financial wellness programs? So let me turn it over to my friend and colleague, James Bremis.
Thanks, Al. Appreciate it. So Alan gave us a little bit of an overview of what I'm going to be covered today. Really, financial wellness is achieved with the knowledge and skills that financial literacy provides. Financial wellness isn't something that can be done for us, but you as an employer can provide the resources to help your employees reach financial wellness. So today, I thought it'd be helpful to cover some of the key cornerstones of financial literacy first. Then we'll discuss some of the resources you can provide your employees to help them on their journey to reach financial wellness. So when people are asked what money means to them, they often say words like freedom, security, and independence. Money can afford us the opportunity to do what we most want to do. In our view, wealth can therefore be measured in time. The amount of money that you have divided by your monthly expenses equals your amount of time or independence measured in months. So we use this basic application in financial planning, the most common example being with emergency funds. How much should you have in your emergency fund is based on what your living expenses are and how long you want to ensure that emergency fund would and should last should you or your significant other be out of work, generally between 3 to 6 months. We believe families should set aside money for investment as early and as often as possible. In this example, that first one at the top there, we highlight a 25-year-old who is investing $20,500 per year in hypothetical investments returning 6% per year. By age 65, our 25-year-old will have contributed $820,000 into her investment account, but they'll have earned over $2.5 million in investment returns for an end sum close to $3.4 million.
Hey, Bram.
Yep.
I'm sorry to interrupt. It looks like the screen is frozen. There we go.
You got it there?
Better. Thank you.
All right, no problem. So where was I? So 3.4 million. What if she had started later in life? Not only would her contributions be smaller, but her earned returns would likely be smaller as well. So in fact, if she doesn't start until she's 45 years old, her end sum would only be about $819,000. less than a quarter of her 25-year-old self. You want to start saving younger and saving often. I like this slide. This slide's a little fun. So there's a big difference between rich and wealthy. History is littered with cautionary tales of people who have earned substantial sums of money in relatively short periods of time, only to blow it all in a similarly short period of time. So in the chart here, we highlight some famous athletes and entertainers such as Allen Iverson and Nicolas Cage, who've gone broke. Cage famously bought a private island, a Gulfstream jet, the Shah of Iran's Lamborghini. He bought a shark, a crocodile, just to name a few. For the wealthy, it's not about their income, it's about what they do with the income. These predominantly self-employed people who are primarily first generation affluent enjoy budgeting, like these people here on the right-hand side of the screen. They live below their means and they invest nearly 20% of household realized income each year. So it's not necessarily about how much you make, it's more about what you actually do with your income. Those are the habits that we want to try to create with folks. Every purchase has an opportunity cost. Once you spend your money, it's gone. You can't use it again for something else. So when you look at how all these expenses add up, right? A few dollars per day for coffee for each adult in the household might not sound like a lot, but $2,300 a year certainly does. If we only pick on coffee buyers, we'll take a look at our attention to gym memberships as well, right? That's one of the biggest expenses, I think, for a lot of people, at least in my age bracket. It costs on average $1,800 a year for two adults to have gym memberships. But how many people actually use these memberships regularly? You don't want to get started on lottery tickets, right? $600. But what we're trying to show here, little expenses over time can become unrecognized big expenses. And when you think about, the opportunity costs of these expenses, you can't use it for something else once you've spent it on any of those expenses that we just mentioned there. So let's look at the coffee example again. $2.95 a day doesn't sound like a lot, but in 5 years, you'll have ingested over $5,000 worth of coffee. In 20 years, over 20,000. In 40 years, over 40,000. It's a lot of money for someone that's not necessarily a necessity that you're spending that money on, depending on who you ask. And it can be made at home for a fraction of the cost. So what if you invested the $40,000 of coffee money instead of ingesting it? Over 40 years, if you assume a 6% rate of return in our hypothetical, that $2.95 invested in the market each day would amount to $177,000. 6% market returns based on a hypothetical example, right? It's not the performance of any market, but it's kind of a middle of the road rate of return. So it's not crazy to think that making little changes to your budget and little changes to your expenses will be able to have huge effects in your finances. We believe households have to prepare against three major contingencies that can devastate the finances of any household. First one is you can break down on the journey. And if that happens, where will your income come from if you can't work anymore? Do you have disability insurance? Second is you can die too soon. How prepared is your estate? Have you written a will or a trust? How much life insurance do you have? Does your spouse or next of kin know where your assets are and how big your liabilities are? And then the third is you can live too long. Do you have enough money saved? What happens if you need full-time care? Can you afford to live in an assisted living facility? In our view, the basic rule for all kinds of insurance is bear the risks that you can afford, insure the risks you can't afford. You might be able to afford to lose your jewelry. You might not be able to afford to lose your home in a fire. You might be able to afford to replace broken glasses, but you might not be able to afford months of medical bills if you contract a rare disease. You might not need to buy collision insurance on a dilapidated car, but you need to buy insurance on your life to care for your family in case of an untimely demise. Be prepared like the soldier with the shield, right? Don't be the insured person sealed in bubble wrap. Once the wealth has been created, once you've started saving, you've actually built up some assets, the next consideration is longevity. In certain instances, you might be able to pass wealth on to the next generation. If that's the case, households can develop a strategy for distributing wealth at some point down the road. There's a couple of questions that you're going to want to consider here. So, how involved should children be in the estate planning process? We think children should be involved in family financial decisions from a young age and should be attending estate and financial planning meetings by the time they're teens. The children are the future leaders of the family, so you want to prepare them for that future role. Next question that you're going to want to consider is, what are appropriate inheritances for your children at some point? The answers are going to be different for all families, but a couple suggestions that we've seen with certain families. Start by gifting your children up to the annual gift tax exclusion. This year it's 17,000, not necessarily more than that, but see how they handle that windfall. Do they blow it, or do they manage it correctly? And you can use it as a learning experience to provide guidance. Using trusts in certain instances, rather than just bequeathing assets through a will. You can even structure trusts to stipulate accomplishments like earning an advanced degree, starting a business, or building a career to receive that money. And then lastly, you could use the funds for a foundation or a charitable cause, depending on how big your estate is and how you structure it. But defining a purpose for the wealth can be critical for certain families. Teach the family to view money as a tool for supporting a cause rather than an instrument for acquiring more things. So these were some of the fundamentals that someone should have some basic knowledge of to identify as financially literate. Here are some ways that you can help employees achieve financial literacy. First is engaging knowledgeable professionals. When you go to the doctor with an ailment, they're typically going to recommend you to a specialist. Same thing with your finances. You want to work with someone who specializes in financial planning. You want to make sure that the education you provide to your employees meets their needs and engages with them in the way that they want to be engaged. So that can include group meetings. Most companies are going to cover at least the basics of their employer-sponsored plans, but you shouldn't feel hesitant to take it a step further. You want to try to do more tailored education in certain instances, and that can include anything from budgeting to estate planning, or a topic that's front of mind, like the volatility in the markets now. Some employees feel more comfortable in a one-on-one setting, so offering those is certainly important. And these days, I think a lot of people prefer a virtual setting, like the one we're in now. So whether it's offering virtual meetings like this webinar here today, utilizing different mediums, whether it be a mobile app or a robust website, and making sure that you distribute content in different ways, whether it's videos, blog posts, emails, social media, etc. Those are all going to be really important. Al, do you have any thoughts that you wanted to bring up here?
No, Brem, thanks though. You're covering it really nicely. Nothing to add right now.
Okay. And then once you've established a financial literacy program, the next step is to help your employees apply what they've learned to their situation by offering financial planning at work, as Al alluded to at the beginning of the presentation. For a lot of employees, they won't engage a planner because they're afraid of costs. They just aren't sure if they have enough in assets to really warrant one, or they just don't want to go through the vetting process just because they don't know where to start, or that fee hurdle is certainly a big thing, at least in the beginning. You as the employer can do a lot of that for them by offering this as a benefit. A good financial planner is going to help in several different areas: investment management, retirement planning, estate planning, tax management, and risk management. Basically, each of those cornerstones that we identified for a financially literate person. Employees can help their employees build their nest egg with years of earnings and by providing the investment vehicles to save it in, whether that's a company retirement plan or HSA account, if you guys offer that. But the next step is going to be to offer financial planning. This provides them with the framework to get more out of their paychecks by building a budget, helping them figure out what they're saving for and getting specific about it, and how to draw on the assets that they actually built up. So thinking about things not necessarily in a silo, but more holistically, right? So we listed some examples here on the right-hand side. Social security planning, how to couple that with distributions from your retirement account aggregation, looking at all of your accounts together, um, observing your insurances, taking a look and diagnosing what insurances you currently have, whether that's through your employer or on your own, and figuring out what risks you're not currently covering. Debt management and budgeting is always a big one, and college planning, just to name a few. These are things that I think are definitely important, to make sure that not only are people being provided with the tools to save and ways to accumulate wealth, but also how to use it effectively and actually be thoughtful with your distributions and replacing your income in retirement. So at this point, we're happy to open it up to any questions. Al and I's contact information is here. Um, and
Brent, one of the things I'd like to just throw out to the group, if real quick,
Yep.
uh, if we could hear from folks, through maybe like the Q&A feature, has anybody recently attempted to set up a wellness program in-house? And would love to hear, from you if you did, and how did that go? What is that like? Is it helping? Or just to get, are folks even thinking about financial wellness programs? Is that something that the group is considering? Would love to hear from you. The other thing, just to throw out to the group, again, to try to get some feedback from you guys in this virtual world. How are you educating your folks? What's working? What's not working? Is it, are you doing things like, for instance, our approach is a combination of virtual and live, groups and one-on-ones. What's going on out there? What have you found? What's working? What's not working? What are you guys doing? So would love to hear from you about some of those issues. I know we've set up we actually Brem, if you want to check the Q&A, we've set up some financial wellness programs recently, and it's been very helpful. Does it, there is a traction that you have to develop. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, as we found, and the more frequently we're in front of participants and employees, the better.
Yeah. So the feedback, the first feedback that we got, offering financial webinars on a monthly basis regarding retirement plans. We have trouble getting people to attend these sessions. Same with in person. People just don't seem to want to go. Yeah, and we've definitely seen that a lot. I think there's a couple of strategies that you could dive into to try to boost attendance there. For me, the one that I think's most effective, or that I've seen be most effective, is really just making sure that the conversations that we're having with the folks are really targeted, right? So when we do these sessions, we'll poll people beforehand or after the most recent meeting to figure out what topics they really want to hear most about, what topics they're really most concerned about. And that's how we build our future education sessions, so that we keep it fresh. It's not the same thing over and over, and you could potentially be doing that already. But the other thing that I've seen, especially since COVID, is people are digesting content in a lot of different ways. Me and Al are pretty active on LinkedIn as an example. Like, I feel like people are viewing content and digesting content in video form or via blog posts. Like, I've seen that tick up quite a bit. But Al, I think have you seen anything that you feel works particularly well?
Yeah, I think, Brem, first of all, I think your comment a moment ago was right on target. So where we succeed is where our HR, particularly with our HR partners, when our HR partners are able to do some vetting of the employee population beforehand. So what is it? So what I mean by that is our HR partners are finding out what is it that the participant wants to hear about beyond the retirement plan. And then they're helping James and I build a program around that, around the employee's needs. So I think James's comment was spot on. I think the other thing that we've done that's really boosted participation is to do a lunch and learn for the participants. So we sometimes what we'll do is we'll supply lunch. Come get, come, we'll feed you. We'll get some pizzas. We'll get some pizza pies, and we'll feed people. Come have lunch, and it's a nice bribe, and it's also, you don't want people to take their lunchtime and then also, have additional time, through maybe an employee education session. So it's a nice, relaxed way where we're feeding folks and also giving them information. We're not above to do that. I tell you, for some companies, it really does attract a lot of people. So that's something that we can do to build a group meeting. I think the other thing, which is the kind of the 180 of that, the 180 of that is people's access to James Bremis or other planners like James on a one-on-one basis. Because the opposite of a group meeting is and the negative to a group meeting is employees may be hesitant or embarrassed to share personal information. So the fact that we can give a participant access to James and James's calendar, and then James can set up a one-on-one, a private consultation with your participants, is very, very helpful. And that also is a way to move the needle in the right direction, which is engaging with the participant and trying to help, especially if it's a wellness program, because in the retirement program, we're just talking about your funds within the retirement program. When we get into wellness, we're talking about assets in the plan, assets outside the plan, spouses' assets, insurance needs, et cetera. So engaging someone one-on-one is also very helpful in terms of getting them the right advice and getting them to participate in a meaningful way and helping them.
Thanks, Al. Michael, so this is a good comment too. We recently went to auto enrollment, which is definitely helping to increase participation. Our concern is primarily around growing the lower wage employee participation. Does it ordinarily take time to build up their interest and excitement? And this is a good question. This is definitely one that we've had a lot with a lot of clients. I can think of a few off the top of my head, Al. But I think the biggest thing and the most effective thing with this it's not necessarily the interest and the excitement. It's more about the means to be able to actually start to, contribute towards a retirement plan, right? So really making sure that we're educating people about their finances. This is where that budgeting and managing debt kind of presentation really fits perfectly, right? And because these people are going to be really worried about how to stretch their dollars as much as possible, right? And that presentation, in particular, as an example, right? We talk about how to budget. We talk about what typical savings goals should be and what you should be striving for. Really helping to put things into perspective is where this that really helps with this kind of concern here, I think. Giving them the tools to actually be able to contribute, versus just getting them excited about the 401k plan, I think is important and something definitely worth considering.
Yeah, I think again, Michael's comment is spot on because increasingly companies are utilizing auto enrollment. Um, and I think we're at a point now where more companies are deploying auto enrollment than not. So I think most employers today are utilizing auto enroll. So it's increasingly popular. So I think there, what I would say is particularly for the lower wage earner, I think there's a couple of things that you want to try to highlight. Um, One is that uh, it's kind of a basic concept, which is a dollar goes into the 401k or the 403b, a dollar goes into the plan. But I think it's important to try to get the employee to understand that it doesn't actually cost a dollar. The employee's wages are not reduced by a dollar. The employee's wage is probably only reduced by about 30 to it's only reduced by 30 to 40 cents, right? Because the wage rather is the tax effect is uh, there's a tax saving, so the dollar doesn't actually cost a dollar, only cost about 60 cents or 70 cents because the government is tax affecting that dollar by reducing wages. So that especially important for the lower wage earner is the concept of you put the dollar in, but it only costs like 70 cents out of your paycheck because the government, federal and state, are paying the other 30 cents. The other thing I think to communicate and to get people excited is the match. If you have the match, to continue with that concept of you put a dollar in, but only 70 cents. Well, in your account is a dollar plus the match. If you have a safe harbor match, maybe there's a dollar 40 in the account, and yet it only costs you 70 cents. So in that case, we're looking at a doubling of money, which is huge. So I think it's important to convey those concepts. If there is a match, sell the match, have employees contribute up to the match, uh, sell the tax effect. You know, you put a dollar in, but it doesn't cost a dollar. And auto enroll is extremely effective because all the stats show that most folks that are auto enrolled don't opt out. So there's a very, very low opt out rate. So auto enrollment is largely successful. Um, so that's really definitely something to consider for those of you that don't have auto enroll. So last call on questions. If not, we really appreciate your time, and we'll get the deck out to everybody that attended. And I want to thank everyone at Long Island SHRM for giving this opportunity. It's great to be a sponsor of this great organization. And if we can help you in any way, please let James and I know. And if no other questions, everybody enjoy the weekend. Happy St. Patty's Day to everybody, and we'll see you at the next SHRM event. Thank you very much.